Hi, I'm Fred Satilli. I want to talk about an important subject right now, and that is jurisdiction. I want to live peacefully under the law. I see that the federal government and state governments and even local governments are not operating under the law. They're just doing pretty much anything they want, any way they want, with disregard for the law. So, as I study the law, one of the things that's come up is jurisdiction. Is somebody doing something to you that they're not allowed to do to you? And an interesting case came up. My friend Jones was sent a letter by a court, and the letter came from the court stating that somebody had a complaint against him and he had to make good on that complaint. And he's a very honorable man and he'll be happy to make good on that complaint. But who's asking? Is this a legitimate court? Is this a legitimate judge? Is this a legitimate clerk of court? Who sent him this thing and why are they involved? So he decided to question the jurisdiction. And I'm going to read this short document that he wrote. And even though it is a short document, it could even be shorter because he has a lot of repetition in here. But it's important to have repetition because we find that some people just don't get it. And no matter how you explain to them that they don't have the authority to do whatever they're doing, they just continue on as if they do. So here we go. And he has his name as the name and address at the top of this thing. And then he's got three different people, a law group, a superior court, and a levying officer are stated here. And so he sent copies to all of those people. Now, what he did was not a plead, and it was not a motion. What he did was he created an affidavit, a notice, and a cease and desist order. So he's not acknowledging that they have a legitimate court or that any of this is qualified yet. He's responded like this. It starts out, it says, notice to agents is notice to principals, and notice to principals is notice to agents. So nobody can say that they didn't get this because everybody involved, first of all, they've all been sent a copy, but they have a responsibility to let each other know. In other words, if a judge receives something, he's got to let the court know and the clerk know and anybody else, and they all have to do that. It's all part of their responsibility as agents of the court or agents of the legal system. And he has here, I, Gerald Hansen Jr., signatory officer to the Corporation 1 General Engineering Incorporated, and to the vessel Gerald Monty Hansen Jr., notify all recipients that 1 General Engineering Incorporated is not conducting any business at this time, has not been conducting any business, and will not be conducting any business in the future. So the entity that they're going after a corporation, Engineering Incorporated, not him, but they sent it to him. He's letting them know that they're not, it's not going to happen. Okay, now, the second item is, I do not consent to any levy or any sort under these circumstances and under these conditions. I demand before any other unauthorized or authorized action is to be taken that the bond and insurance information be provided to all parties for the following employees. And then he's got a deputy sheriff, a clerk, a presiding magistrate, and who's a judicial officer. So what he's saying here is, before any action is taken, I need to see the bond and insurance information to these parties. Now, when a person wants to be a judge or be a clerk of court, they have to post a bond. They have to put up, let's say, just a figure like $1 million, that if they do something horrible, they lose that money. It's a surety. So this way you keep them honest. They have something to lose. They have skin in the game. If they do something horrific, they can lose their bond. Now, what has happened in a lot of these jurisdictions is, rather than put up a bond, they bought an insurance policy and they pay a premium, like malpractice insurance, and if anything happens, if a suit comes against them, the insurance company pays it. Now, this is not lawful. They have to have a bond. They have to feel the pain. They can't have an insurance company feel the pain. It defeats the whole purpose. There has to be personal pain if you make a mess. And they've taken to this practice of buying the insurance. Now, when a judge is doing horrible stuff, and some of these guys, it's all day, every day, everything they do is bad, it's in your interest to contact their insurance company and saying, hey, you're insuring a guy who's doing a lot of bad stuff. You need to either drop him, raise his premiums, or whatever it is. But even doing that is kind of moot because they're really not supposed to have that at all. So it's once again, they're operating out of jurisdiction unlawfully, and he's pointing this out. Okay? As one of we the people, and that's an important thing, he's coming in there as a living soul. And the employer to the public servant that are party to this judgment, it is required for all my public servants to have a bond, official bond, and insurance in case they damage the public in any capacity, which he is the public. And I will require these credentials. In the event these credentials are not on file in any capacity, I will require that the public servant vacate the public office they hold. This is not negotiable. This is a requirement of mine as their employer. In the event my employees don't have their required credentials, this judgment is null and void. So if you don't have the bond, you have to vacate the seat of the judge. You cannot be a judge without a bond, and if you don't have a bond, you can't be a judge. It's equality, right? A plus B equals C, C minus B equals A. If you have to have a bond to be a judge and you don't have a bond, you can't be a judge. You're in that position illegally, unlawfully. You're sitting up there on the bench pretending to be a judge, but in reality, you can't be because you don't have a bond. There's also an oath that has to be considered, but he doesn't include that here. He's keeping it simple. This matter was decided in a public courthouse without me being present. And in the event that the courthouse is not public, this action is unlawful and null and void. So this letter was sent to him by a court, and there's no court case yet. He hasn't been brought there. He hasn't been pleaded. There's been no arraignment. There's not a case. They're acting prematurely of process. His due process is being denied here. This is a cease and desist until all parties requiring the proper credentials furnish them. This matter is not authorized to proceed with any further action. He's serious here. You're not going to be able to proceed unless you come up with these credentials. I, Gerald Hansen Jr., am not a U.S. citizen, yet I own a citizen. Now, this is a tricky subject. When you're born, you're a person. When they give you a birth certificate, they create a straw man with the same name as you, and there's lots of reasons for that we're not going to get into here, but what he's saying is, I own a citizen. In other words, he has a birth certificate, but I am not a resident. See, a resident, if you say you're a resident, then you're required to follow the laws of residency. So he establishes that he's not that. I inhabit California in the county of Los Angeles. I am not a person in an office. I am a sovereign American state national, which my status can be found at 8 U.S.C., United States Code, Section 1101A21. With this status, I am a party to the United States of America Constitution and am exercising my rights guaranteed by the contract of the United States of America Constitution. Now, I've done videos in the past saying the Constitution is a contract between a government and a person, not a government of a citizen. If you're a 14th Amendment citizen, the Constitution does not apply to you. So he wants to make it very clear that he's an American state national protected by the Constitution and not contracted with a court that is a corporate entity for profit with a Dun and Bradstreet number. He's willing to come to court if it's a public court with public servants. But if it's a corporation for profit, he's not contracted with them. And that's the only condition under which you can go to such a tribunal. When you go to a court that's a for-profit corporation, it's the same thing as a corporate meeting. Like if you went to McDonald's and they had a corporate meeting and you worked for that company and you broke their bylaws, then you would go before their corporate counsel and they would discuss it. But he's not contracted with them. He's making that clear here. For any party acting in the capacity of public office to move forward in any manner is a violation of U.S.C. 18, Section 242, and or Section 241, which is a deprivation of rights or a conspiracy to deprive me of my rights under the color of law. For any public servant of mine to move forward with this judgment without providing their credentials is an emolument violation and will be dealt with accordingly. In other words, an emolument violation means that they're doing this for money for themselves. And that's what a for-profit corporation would do. So these people, unless they can prove that they're a public servant, they're doing this to get his money for themselves. It's an emolument violation, and that's really, really illegal. So he's just letting them know that if he finds this out and they proceed, he's going to go after him on those grounds. Section 9. Upon all actors acting in the capacity of public service that are a party to this controversy, and their having provided their credentials to all parties in this judgment via the post office to the address provided at the top of this affidavit, notice of cease and desist, I, at this point, will provide the remedy to resolve the matter. So he's saying that there's a problem here that needs resolution, and he will be happy to provide the remedy to resolve the matter. But first, they have to prove that they're really a court, a public court, and not a for-profit corporation. To be clear, all public servants must provide their credentials to all parties. This is a requirement, and it is the law. All parties acting in the capacity of public service to disregard my request is unlawful and dishonorable, and as your employer, I demand you leave your position of public service immediately if you do not have the private credentials for your office. To be clear once more, if all public service officials do not have the proper credentials for their office, this matter does not exist. In the event this is not a public courthouse to which this matter was heard in my absence, this controversy does not exist and is null and void, under cause of not being a lawful public accommodation. Again, to be clear, I do not authorize any further action to be taken until all parties acting in the capacity of public office have provided to all parties in this proceeding physical evidence of having the proper credentials for their office. This is a requirement of mine and is the law for all my employees to have all their proper credentials. This affidavit, notice cease and desist for this courthouse to be acting in honor on behalf of the public. All public service agents must have the proper credentials in order for this court to be operating in a public capacity, and their insurance and bonding information must be on file. Please provide these documents in their entirety to all parties involved in this controversy. Until these documents are provided, this matter does not have my consent to move forward and has no lawful standing. Upon all parties, this is so great, upon all parties having my employees' documentation of bond and insurance, I, Gerald Monty Hansen, Jr., acting in the capacity of signatory officer to 1 General Engineering Incorporated, will provide the remedy for this controversy. And then he signs it, and he signs it sui juris, which means I have the mental capacity to represent myself. So, the document itself speaks for itself. I hope the embellishment of my comments helps to make it super clear. We're confronted with a situation right now here in our country where there are fake governments, fake offices. There are government agencies that are not authorized by law or not authorized in any way by a ballot measure or any kind of a vote or anything like that. There are just wild bureaucrats out there doing not just money grabs, but land grabs is the current craze, which there's one politician who's especially good at that. But this has to be done. If you have a court contacting you or any kind of lawyers or anything like that, the first thing that has to be done is their credentials have to be presented. Whatever they say they are, they have to prove that, because if they're not what they say they are, they're just rogue highwaymen, pirates coming after your money under the color of law, pretending to be a judge, wearing the gown, sitting up on the high chair like a baby, banging a hammer once again like a baby. It's pretty infantile, but it's quite a little show. You know, they're a little satanic ritual. But there are plenty of people doing this who have no authority to do it. And this man here, and he is a gentleman. I'll call him a gentleman. This gentleman, he really is a gentleman. He's going to provide remedy. But first they have to authorize themselves. So he's got the right idea. He's doing the right thing. This is the process of law. They made these laws. They have to obey them. And I hope that you understand that. Before you allow any legal action to be taken against you, first make sure whoever's attempting to take that action is authorized to do so. And thank you for listening. And my name is Fred Satilli. I'm going to keep studying this material. These things are becoming more and more important to me. I'm seeing more and more of this kind of violation. And everybody has to begin to know this stuff and be aware of it, because our country is upside down. Things are happening that should never be happening. Illegal, unlawful, unauthorized. We just had an incredible usurpation of the entire medical industry by people unauthorized to do so. And there's quite a few other examples. So I'm sure you could think of a few on your own. Thanks again for listening. I'm Fred Satilli, and I'll see you again next time.